Welcome to Whole Word Ministries. Thank you for joining me as we read through the Bible together. In this session, we'll be reading Genesis chapters 29 and 30 from the English Standard Version. I'll be putting God's sacred name back into his word as I read. Anywhere that you see either Lord or God in all caps, that's where God's sacred name belongs. But the translators have removed his name from his word. For more information on his name, please read or watch our study, Who is Yahweh Elohim? I'll link it in the description below. Okay, it's time to grab a Bible if you have one and follow along. Chapter 29, verse 1. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it, for out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and when all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. And see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go, pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. Jacob kissed Rachel as a greeting. That's how they greeted one another in their culture. Verse 13, as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought them to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh." And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. The word "but" here should be an "and." The Hebrew prefix that is on her name is the "wa," which always means "and," never "but." So verse 17 should read that Leah couldn't see very well, and Rachel was very beautiful. Verse 18, Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. So they celebrated with a feast, but there obviously were no vows exchanged or paper signed because Laban tricks Jacob by giving him the wrong daughter, and Jacob didn't notice. Verse 25, and in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn." So in their culture, a father had to marry off his daughters in their birth order. But Laban didn't tell Jacob that, so he tricked him, not only into marrying the wrong daughter, but also into 7 more years of servitude. Verse 27, "Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Now, verse 27 is very confusing. Why would Laban be asking Jacob to fulfill his 7 years for Leah when he'd already fulfilled them, as we read in verse 21? Some interpreters believe this week means 7 days, asking Jacob to complete a week-long marriage celebration. But once he took Leah into his bed, she became his wife, so why would Laban ask something that's inconsequential? Also, in the interlinear translation, the word for week is given as Strong's H 7620, Shabua, which means a week specifically of years. So if it's the word week, it's referring to a week of years. And as I said, his week of years was already fulfilled for Leah. Another possibility here is that the word isn't Strong's H 7620. Let's look at the page in the interlinear again and look at the Hebrew word, not the Strong's number given to it. You can see that it's actually the 3-letter word shabah, not the 4-letter word shabua. There is no wa in the word, so that's weird. Ancient Hebrew writing doesn't have vowels, only consonants. They used context to determine which vowel sounds belonged in the written words. In the early Middle Ages, the Jewish Masoretes developed a series of vowel markings for scripture to show which vowel sounds belonged in the script. In the Strong's Concordance, the words with different vowel markings are given different numbers. When we look at verse 27 in the interlinear Bible, we see the word that's translated week is shabah, but the Strong's number given is for shabua. You can see the word circled in red. It just has the 3 letters, shin bet ayin, not shin bet wa ayin. The primitive root of the 3-letter word shabah means to swear. The words derived from this primitive root do mean 7, but the only difference between them is the vowel markings. So I propose that the word here in the Masoretic text could be oath, not week, as the vowel markings that differentiate the words were added in the Middle Ages, based on the translator's understanding of the text, which would make way more sense, as the verse would then read, "Fulfill the oath of this one, and we will give you also this other one," which would mean Laban is asking Jacob to keep his marriage covenant with Leah, not divorce her, and then he'll give Jacob Rachel as well. However, if we read this verse in the Septuagint, which is the Greek version, which is much older than the Masoretic text, it says, "Fulfill then her 7s, and I will give to you her also in return for your labor, which you labor with me, yet 7 other years," which means the 7 applies to Rachel, not Leah, as the Masoretic text suggests. This would also make sense in context. Either way, though, the verse is not asking Jacob to continue with a 7-day marriage celebration, as some commentators suggest. But as far as I can see, the Septuagint version of this verse makes the most sense here. So I'll read both verse 27 and 28 from the Septuagint while you follow along in your Bible, and you'll see what I mean. "Fulfill then her 7s, and I will give to you her also in return for your labor, which you labor with me, yet 7 other years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her 7s, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to wife." Do you see how that just makes so much more sense from the Septuagint? So Jacob married both Leah and Rachel at the same time, and then served Laban for 14 years. Verse 29. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. When Yahweh saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Remember how we've discussed that Yahweh's plan for marriage is between one man and one woman, and that multiple wives was a pagan practice not approved of by Yahweh? Consecutive wives were called concubines, which is the Hebrew word Strong's H 6370, pilegesh, whereas wife is Strong's H 802, ishshah. It seems that from Yahweh's perspective, consecutive wives were pilegesh, not ishshah, even if the men considered them ishshah. In this case, Jacob is calling Rachel a wife, and he favors her over Leah, which displeases Yahweh. Why? Because Leah is Jacob's only wife, according to Yahweh. So Yahweh makes Rachel barren in response to Jacob not following his statutes on marriage. Verse 32, "And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, because Yahweh has looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me." Reuben means see a son. Verse 33, "She conceived again and bore a son and said, because Yahweh has heard that I am hated, he has also given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon." Now Simeon means hearing. Verse 34, "Again she conceived and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi." And Levi means joined. Verse 35, "And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise Yahweh. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing." Judah means Yah be praised. Chapter 30, verse 1. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go in to her so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went in to her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Now Dan means judgment. Verse 7, Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. And Naphtali means my wrestling. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she called his name Gad. Now Gad means fortunate. Verse 12, Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. And Asher means happy. Verse 14, in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." Mandrakes were used as a treatment for infertility, so both Leah and Rachel wanted them. Can you just imagine this, though? Leah and Rachel are treating Jacob like a possession. Rachel is basically prostituting him out for some roots. Verse 16, when Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my servant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. And Issachar means man of hire. Verse 19, and Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him six sons." So she called his name Zebulun. And Zebulun means dwelling. Verse 21, after she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Dinah means acquitted or vindicated. Verse 22, then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May Yahweh add to me another son." And Joseph means adding. Verse 25, as soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that Yahweh has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." This phrase, learned by divination, is also translated learned by experience, which is more likely its meaning here. Laban has figured out over the years that Yahweh has blessed him because of Jacob. Why would he need a soothsayer to divine for him what is plainly obvious? So Laban doesn't want Jacob to leave, because having Jacob working for him has made Laban very wealthy. So he asked Jacob to name his price to stay. Laban is coming across as a very greedy man, manipulative, devious, and greedy. Verse 29, Jacob said to him, "You yourself know that I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and Yahweh has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when I shall provide for my own household also." He said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. So immediately Laban cheats Jacob on their arrangement and hides all the sheep that should have gone to Jacob. Jacob agreed to work for Laban a few more years in exchange for all the goats and sheep of a certain coloring. But Laban took all that would have been Jacob's pay and sent them away with his sons, so Jacob couldn't have the offspring that would come from them. Do you think it's possible that the trouble Jacob is having with Laban could be the consequence given to him by Yahweh for stealing his brother's birthright and blessing? Verse 37, Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks, and so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly, and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Thank you very much for joining me for this session of Reading Through the Bible. I hope you'll join me again for the next session, where we'll be reading Genesis chapter 31. Shalom.